All right, the corporate media is having a field day after Donald Trump's new cabinet is apparently in talks considering a soft invasion of Mexico to permanently dismantle and destroy the cartels. This, along with buying back the Panama Canal and Greenland. I really think the Dems' heads are exploding. And what in the world is happening in New York City just 1 week after New York Governor Kathy Hochul held a press conference to tell the world how the subway system in New York City has never been safer? A Guatemalan immigrant just immolated an innocent woman while napping on the subway. What in the world is happening? And of course, leave it to CNN to somehow turn this into a victory, catching this guy, catching him into a victory for the New York governor. We're going to show you. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So Donald Trump is reportedly considering a soft invasion of Mexico to permanently dismantle and destroy the cartels. That's according to the mainstream media, who says Trump's cabinet is in talks discussing how large of an invasion should take place. Look, this is false framing by the press, folks. The entire story was written by Rolling Stone last month, and now the media is just picking it up, recirculating the same sources, trying to make it sound like Trump's starting a war with Mexico. Not true. What Trump's proposed is sending U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to eliminate the cartel's command and control, and then possibly doing limited airstrikes on the cartel's weapon depots, strongholds, drug labs, all of which would be done in cooperation with the Mexican government, who would then send their own military in to finish them off and conduct arrests.
I will immediately designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. We're going to do it immediately. And we'll unleash the full power of federal law enforcement, ICE, Border Patrol. How good is Tom Homan, right? He's phenomenal. I've known him a long time. I'll bet you Sheriff Joe likes Tom Homan, right? Sheriff Joe, yes? Yep. He goes, yep.
Look, Mexico's like 1970s New York on steroids. How the mob used to buy politicians, pay off dirty cops. Mexico's like that, but at a whole other level. The cartels are so powerful south of the border. They have their own lobby in Mexican politics. They buy politicians, and the ones who are brave enough to not go along with it, brave enough to speak out against the cartel, they're just killed. No joke, killed and hung upside down from a bridge. Happens regularly to politicians and police who aren't on the take. It's why Mexico's recent presidents have all been so scared to say anything negative about the cartels. They are extremely violent. I have a friend from Guadalajara who says it's like a regular thing down there. Just walking down the street, and you'll see half a dozen bodies hanging from a bridge. She sees it weekly. Nobody's ever held accountable for these crimes. Tom Homan, for instance, Trump's new border czar, he was just interviewed by Tucker Carlson. He broke down, started crying, started tearing up when he was talking about just how violent the cartels are, the types of things that he's seen in his career. Take a listen to this.
300,000 missing children. That's something else I've read reference to.
Look, over 500,000 children been trafficked into this country.
This problem is just so enormous, and the bureaucracy is so complex and hard to fight, and they always win in the end. Why would you take this job?
I say this many times because of things I've seen in my career. So I grew up in town 2,500. I fast forward. I'm standing back with tractor trailer, 19 dead people at my feet that baked to death in back that tractor trailer, including a 5-year-old little boy who suffocated to death. And on top of him was his father who was trying to protect him. During that investigation, they said that little boy begged his father not to let him die because he wanted to see his mom again. Here's a 5-year-old little boy who knew he was dying and asked his dad for help. And his dad, his dad can't help him, right?
No.
I've talked to little girls as young as 9 who were raped multiple times by members of the cartel. Grown men crawled upon this little girl, took everything innocent and pure from her. Her life would never be the same. Look in her eyes, there wasn't life in her eyes. It's just, this little girl's devastated for life. And this happens every day. I wrote an op-ed for Fox News, and I says, If Joe Biden wins the presidency, we lose the border. And when you lose the border, trafficking of sex trafficking will skyrocket. Child deaths will skyrocket. Migrant deaths will skyrocket. American deaths will skyrocket from drugs coming across that border. So when President Trump calls me up, says, you've been complaining about for 4 years. You want to come fix it? How do you say no?
And if you read Rolling Stone's piece, they admit this, like in paragraph 4 or 5, that Trump's not really invading Mexico, but we'll say he is. Look at this. Within Donald Trump's government in waiting, there's a fresh debate over whether and how thoroughly the president-elect should follow through on his campaign promise to attack or even invade Mexico as part of the war he's pledged to wage against powerful drug cartels. How much should we invade Mexico, says a senior Trump transition member? That's the question. But if you keep reading, they eventually get to the truth, writing another source close to Trump describes to the Rolling Stone what they're calling a soft invasion of Mexico is actually American special forces, not a large theater deployment, would be sent covertly to eliminate cartel leaders. And corporate media is now jumping on this story like it's a bad thing. Trump solving a major problem that's been killing Americans for years is a bad thing. What they don't seem to understand is that the American people want Trump to do this. He was elected to do this. And another story that ties directly into what we just reported is what the hell is happening in New York City. A Guatemalan immigrant was just arrested after allegedly immolating a woman on a New York City subway car over the weekend, lighting her on fire while she slept, then walking over to a bench and watching. The victim burned to death. The suspect did nothing to help her, all of it captured on CCTV footage. Here's the New York City Police Commissioner explain how they identified and captured the suspect. Watch this.
Today's brutal murder was captured on one of those onboard train video cameras. It offered detectives immediately answers to questions that they had. What happened? It offered them images of the perpetrator. It allowed them to take those images and release them to the public. And it allowed the public to see something and say something, and that's why we're standing here now reporting that an individual is in custody, a person of interest is in custody.
CNN.
Someone who we believe carried out one of the most just depraved crimes one person could possibly commit against another human being. And it took the life of an innocent New Yorker. But at this hour, I am pleased to announce that a short time ago, alert NYPD transit officers took a person of interest into custody.
So this poor woman was resting on a subway car. This asshole thinks he could just do this to her, decides to just do this, calmly walk over to a bench and watch. All we know about this guy is that he claims he's from Guatemala. Police are very tight-lipped about his immigration status and leave it to CNN to somehow turn catching him into this major victory lap for the New York governor. You can't make this up, saying Kathy Hochul should tap herself on the back after working tirelessly to set up the subway cars with CCTV footage. Roll the tape.
I just want to get your thoughts generally about this crime and how it all progressed throughout the day and the key role that officials say technology played.
When this technology was suggested by the governor and the mayor, cameras on every train car, cameras in every station, the New York Civil Liberties Union came out with a statement. The New York Civil Liberties Union strongly opposes NYPD's plans to increase the number of surveillance cameras until police come up with a plan to safeguard the use of these cameras and the images they capture on tape. Our concerns extend to the announced increase in surveillance cameras on the subway. It was interesting that, privacy advocates and civil liberties people oppose these cameras. When you talk to people in the subway, all they say is more cops, more cameras.
Yeah, that it is so interesting. And you make such a great point that if that camera wasn't there, then we would have maybe never known that anybody had a role in lighting this woman on fire.
That's her job. It's also her job to clean up the city and keep violent creeps off the streets, which she's failed at. And we reported on how dangerous New York City has gotten in the last year, how there's like this feeling in the air when you're in New York, even in nice areas like in Brooklyn, nice areas in Brooklyn where you'd want to live if you lived in Brooklyn. you still don't feel safe. The police never seem to do anything anymore because they're scared of the repercussions. Violent immigrant gangs run the streets in New York. They do drive-bys all the time. Drive-bys are extremely common now. Feels like Gotham City, like it did during 80s New York before Rudy Giuliani. And to top it off, this heinous crime took place just days after New York's governor held this press conference to claim that New York has never been safer. You can't make this up. Watch.
Say a lot of things with statistics, and I see the percentage that crime is down 42% since 2021. But if you look back to pre-pandemic, and I know you like to say that overall crime is down 12% since the pandemic, but murders are up 200%, felony assault is up 55%, and burglary is up 140%. So are you saying that this is progress?
Are you talking about statewide, city, or subway?
No, crime in the transit system. I'm sorry, Governor. Yes, crime in the subway system.
Okay, you want to answer that?
In another story, Joe Biden, in one of his final acts as president, just announced this morning, Monday morning, that he's commuting the sentences of 37 out of 40 prisoners currently sitting on federal death row, reclassifying them to life sentences. Joe Biden saying, "I've dedicated my career to reducing violent crime and ensuring a fair and effective justice system. Make no mistake, I condemn these murderers, grieve for the victims of their despicable acts, and ache for the families who have suffered unimaginable and irreparable loss." Yet he's taking away the justice the victims and the families deserve and have been waiting for. I'm going to spare you the details of who these 37 prisoners were that Joe Biden just pardoned. Just know they are like the worst of the worst, many of them targeting children. It's just crazy. I really don't think Biden even knows he did this. His aides make these decisions and they tell him where to sit. They tell him which papers to sign. They tell him, "Joe, wave to the camera." Joe waves. Who in their right mind would waste their time helping these 37 people? There are thousands of innocent people in prison today, wrongly convicted. Happens all the time, stuck in prison. That is what the pardon power is for. If I were president, I would have a 24/7 pardon office all day long looking for innocent people behind bars and pardoning them. There's so many cases like that. Instead, they focus on these people. It's crazy. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.